Well, Jason and I spent 2 hours on UCSS today and didn't talk any Cavs, which felt a little sacrilegious, Jason. So we figured we hop on here and get into at least two things I think are relevant in the Cavaliers world. You haven't been on in a while. I've had to replace you with some co-hosts, but we're happy to have you back, and we're going to get into all that coming up right now on the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. What's up, guys? Mikey McNuggets here alongside Jason Lloyd, who's back in the building. Jason, it's been a while. Hasn't been a ton of Cavs news to talk about, so you're excused. It's an excused absence. But how you been? Where you been? And are you excited to talk a little Cavs tonight in this doldrum of absolute nothingness that has been the Cavs offseason?
I've been everywhere from the Greenbrier in West Virginia to the Jersey Shore to my roof to pull a tree off it. It's been an eventful couple of weeks, but dipping out again for a couple of days this week and then settling in for the long haul of the NFL season. But I texted and said, let's talk some Cavs, and thought, well, all right, it's been a minute. Let's talk some Cavs.
I know the last time we talked Cavs was the day Evan Mobley got his extension, because that was the last Canva I had to update. So it's been about a month, Jason, and I know you had a tree fall in your house and you lost power in those crazy storms. But I say that seriously, because did you get a chance to watch any of Team USA basketball, mainly against Serbia in the semifinals and then France in the gold medal game? Did you see any of it?
Yeah, very little of Serbia, just highlights of Serbia. I did see quite a bit of the gold medal game, though. What a game. Steph Curry doing it again, man.
It's incredible. I've always liked Steph. I'm curious what Cavs fans, and you in particular, Jason, how did it feel like rooting for Steph in a moment like that? Because it had to be a conflict of interest. And I saw a bunch of people on Twitter saying, holy shit, this is what it's been like for the last 15 years. Like, no wonder he's the most popular guy in the NBA.
It was a little wild to see him doing it for your team for once. It was cool. And, I mean, Steph is very likable. I know Cavs fans probably hate him, and rightfully so. I get it. But at the same time, and that was quite a few years ago now. You know, when you think about when the Cavs run ended, really it was 2018. So it's been 6 years since then. So I get it if there's still some hostility, but boy, is he fun. Just as a pure basketball fan, he is so fun to watch.
The amount of people in the world, and I say world very specifically, Jason, who could take a step back contested double team three while LeBron and Kevin Durant are wide ass open on the opposite side of the court in a tight, meaningful basketball game, I think is one. I think Steph's the only player in the world that can get away with that shot, make or miss. And you say, okay, it's Steph. I think the list starts and ends with just him, because KD, the all-time American leading scorer in the Olympics, who had just made a big shot, plus LeBron, the MVP of the Olympics, wide ass open.
Yeah.
And he takes a step back fadeaway over two guys. Just incredible. Just incredible.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I was thinking back to when I was covering LeBron, and there was times where he took bad shots. And he'll tell you he's never taken a bad shot, because anytime he takes a shot, it's a good shot. I would argue against that and say I've seen multiple times when LeBron took bad shots, but I don't know if you could ever call any Steph Curry shot a bad shot. Like, honestly, how can you call any shot a bad shot that Steph takes?
He is the king of the no. Okay, it's Steph.
Okay.
Oh, he made it. And I relate it to pickup. If I was in KD and LeBron's shoes and someone else took that shot in pickup, I'm livid, especially if it's game. And if they make it, I say good shot, but I'm still mad because it's a bad shot. It's just when Steph's in the zone like that, as soon as he crosses half court, it's a good shot for Steph. I don't care. Five guys in his face, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I tweeted this, Jason. I mean this sincerely. He is the best shooter to ever walk the face of the earth.
Oh, for sure.
And I am closer to being the second best shooter on earth than the second best shooter is to being Steph. That's how large the gap is. And I'm serious. And hell, you might be closer to the second best shooter than the second. That the ability he has to shoot off the dribble, off the catch, any body position, fadeaway, hand in his face, the release is so quick, the rotation's pure, his body, his shoulders are square. Every time it is picture perfect, even if it's not the traditional beef, balance, elbow, eyes, follow through jump shot. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. Okay, enough of the Steph-gasm. Here's my big takeaway from Team USA, Jason. And this is something I do think can apply to the Cavaliers this upcoming season. When it became nut crunch time against Serbia and against France, there was a clear hierarchy of how Team USA operated offensively in terms of their rotations and in terms of who did what. And when you look at the Cavs for 2024-2025, during the regular season, the entire season's about finding out and establishing that hierarchy for the playoffs. And it took Team USA 3 or 4 exhibition games that were lackluster, and it took them through the pool play, I think was what they call the first 3 games, the pool play, to mix and match rotations. Tatum didn't play at all. Then Tatum starts. Embiid didn't start. Now Embiid's playing 25 minutes. They each had their moments. And obviously the talent on Team USA far outweighs the talent on any individual team in the NBA. It's not close. However, the progression of what we saw in that 8-game stretch from Team USA in terms of finding out the lineups that worked and who had to play with who played better with who, was a tiny, tiny microcosm of what an NBA season can be, especially with a new head coach and a team that's relatively familiar with each other, but not familiar in the style they're going to be playing. There's going to be some nuances and new realities and learning how to play with each other on and off the court. And most importantly, a guy like Devin Booker, Jason, who's an all NBA caliber player, top 15 guy in the league, arguably the best second, third, whatever you want to argue, shooting guard in basketball, took on a completely different role for Team USA than he does for Phoenix. And he didn't just take it on. He accepted it and excelled in the role. And you can make the case that with Devin Booker and Drew Holiday, and Drew Holiday's role is closer to what he does for the Celtics than what Booker's was for what he does for the Suns. He thrived in it. And you could argue it was the best version of Devin Booker. It actually unlocked this new level of Devin Booker that he can't do it for 82 games and 48 minutes a night in the NBA, but for certain stretches, it was the best version of Devin Booker. And there are going to be certain guys in the Cavs, when push comes to shove and you need to buckle down, find a way to win, they're going to have to sacrifice something. But you can make up for your sacrifices in one area by excelling in the other areas your team needs. And watching Devin Booker thrive in this ancillary role player role and become a star in that, I'm dead set curious on finding out which players in the Cavs are going to become stars in their roles. Whether that's Jarrett Allen, whether that's Evan Mobley becoming a facilitator, whether it's Darius Garland learning to officially play kind of off ball in a movement type offense that we hadn't seen previously. Hell, whether it's Donovan Mitchell doing the same thing. All the players in the Cavs, with them running back the roster, are going to be placed in different roles. Even if it's still primarily the same, it's all going to be a little different. Who can learn to star in their individual role and take on the responsibility of, I got to sacrifice a little bit for myself for the betterment of the team for us to reach the ultimate goal. And we saw it with Booker, with Holiday, with Anthony Davis. Hell, we even saw it with LeBron in the second half against France, deferring to KD, deferring to Steph when his team needed it most. Who on the Cavs is going to step up and star in their new role, even if it's a diminished quote-unquote role in terms of your box score stats that we had seen previously? And Jason, that's kind of my big takeaway from Team USA and trying to relate what we saw over that 8-game stretch to the Cavs for this upcoming season.
And who do you think it's going to be?
I hope it's Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland to a little lesser extent, and then some of the other guys coming off the bench. I think they have more defined roles already. But if you let's look at the bench, for example, right? Caris LeVert. What do you need Caris LeVert to do? You got to create and be a consistent, and keyword consistent, scoring threat off the bench when that starting lineup comes out, right? Consistency and Caris, outside of both starting with the letter C, have never been synonymous.
Nothing in common.
Never. So Caris, you have to find a way to be more consistent. For as good as Jarrett Allen was last year, he played terrific. Best season of his career, bar none, hands down, no questions asked. How do you fit alongside Evan Mobley if Evan's facilitating more offense? How are you creating space? Does that mean becoming the single best screen setter in the NBA? Maybe. Does that mean forcing yourself to be the best offensive rebounder you could possibly be, but starting from a deeper position and crashing as opposed to finding space on the inside? So be it. If it's Darius, you're going to get more spot-up catch-and-shoot threes coming off screens than you ever have in your entire life. They're going to run more sets for you to come off pin downs on the backside, on the strong side, however Atkinson wants to get into it, where you are in a split second deciding pull up, or attack the closeout defender? And are you capable of making shots at a high enough clip now to make the defense pay for laying back? So all those guys, those are just some smaller examples. Max Strus, same way. Max Strus has to be a dead-eye 38, 39, 40% three-point shooter. 33.3% shit ain't going to cut it again, Jason, with the volume I think he's going to take this year. So I'm just fascinated to see which guys in the Cavs are going to be placed in a different role this upcoming season, because some are going to flourish and some are going to sink. It's the natural way that basketball works. This is going to be better for some players and worse for others. And a guy like George Niang, who is my guy, I'm not quite sure how he fits into this system. And a guy like Isaac Okoro, who still isn't signed yet, if he comes back on that qualifying offer or somehow signs a long-term agreement, which at this point I'd be pretty surprised at. What does he do offensively? And how can Kenny Atkinson bring the best out of him? And even if it's not on the offensive end, if he just is purely a defensive stopper, how does Isaac become an even better defensive player than we've seen over the course of his early NBA career thus far, which has been a solid defensive player? He's good. Like he's a very good perimeter point of attack defender. He has to be even better. So I'm just curious to see which guys in their new roles can become quote unquote stars in their role.
Niang, I wonder if he could become a cap casualty in the sense of trying to stay under the luxury tax. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, they don't have many bigs. Like right now, their only backup bigs are Dean Wade and George Niang, which that's an issue.
It is. But they're going to have to, I don't know. They still, we'll save it for another time. We got plenty of time to get into that later. But the Okoro thing is really interesting to see how that's going to play out. Usually when you get to this point in the season, it doesn't end up with that guy staying on that team. We'll see if he's going to be the exception or not. But when you talk about what you're talking about and guys taking on a different role, if it's established stars, you have to be really comfortable, and you have to be comfortable in your own skin and confident in your own ability and put some ego aside. And because like when you say that, I was going back to my time covering the Cavs, and it was Kevin. Obviously, it was Kevin Love who had to take on a completely different role than what he was used to when he came here. And it was hard. It was really hard for him to not get the shots and the numbers and the oxygen and the attention and the love, frankly. He told me, but like, he just wanted somebody to come up and throw an arm around him every once in a while and say, hey, we're asking a lot of you in a different way. And I'm sure it's hard, but like, hang in there and we got you and we like what you're doing. And he didn't really get that. And so he really struggled that first year. And I wonder in this instance, who is that guy? Who's that guy who is comfortable enough to adapt and adjust? And who's the guy who needs a little bit more reassurance? Yeah. And is he going to get that reassurance and where's it going to come from? So it's good questions. Like I can't sit here today and tell you. I mean, if you ask me, it's Evan. Obviously we've talked about Evan being the focal point of everything this offseason. Donovan's role, I don't think is really going to change. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to initiate. He's going to facilitate. And really, Donovan will be. It's up to him how active or inactive he is, because he's going to make this thing go. And then Darius obviously has to have a bounce back season. That's no surprise. And then it's Evan and the development and the flourishment of Evan. And we'll see. I don't know. It's a good point you bring up, though. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and we don't know until we see how Kenny wants to use them. Like, the reality is we could think of the roles that they have for them, but until we actually see it roll out, it's just a question. I'm just curious over the course of 82 games, which of the guys in the Cavs are going to step up and accept the role that they need to play, and which guys are going to be frustrated with the role they're being asked. And Isaiah Thomas, and I'm not sure if this was in a book, Jason, or if he said it, but Isaiah Thomas talked about the disease of more. And it's the whole premise of Bill Simmons' book that he wrote, The Secret of Basketball, that the best teams are content with their roles. And the best part of being a role player, like the key difference that makes the best role players versus just average, is guys that don't try to do too much. They know exactly what they're supposed to do on every given night, and it's the consistent effort and the consistent output. Yeah. And a guy like Darius, because you mentioned established, and the Cavs aren't established. Say what you want about a lot of these guys outside of Donovan Mitchell and maybe Jarrett Allen, maybe. None of these guys are established. Darius, good player. He's an all-star. He is not established. He thinks in his mind he can still take 3, 4, 5 steps up. Evan Mobley, we all think his ceiling is here. And right now he's here, somewhere in that range. Like, it's a lot harder to sacrifice before you reach your own personal peak. And that's why I think it's going to be fascinating this year to see how Atkinson and this staff and how these players respond to being in these different situations where some are going to get more opportunities. Evan's going to get more opportunities this year to create, score, facilitate, have the ball in his hands than he's probably ever had since high school, since AAU days.
Yeah.
But if he's getting the ball, it's taking it out of Darius's hands and Donovan's hands and Jarrett's hands and everyone else. So it's going to be a balancing act. And I'm really curious and frankly excited to see how Kenny Atkinson walks that tightrope.
You know what helps? They all got their money. All of them. They all, I mean, Donovan signed a massive extension. Jarrett got his extension. Evan signed his massive extension. Darius is already into his extension. They've all got their money. And money drives so much in the league of trying to get to that second contract, trying to get the big money deal. Well, they've all got that. Donovan's into his third contract. Darius max, Evan max, Jarrett onto his third. So money in terms of I got to get mine, I got to get my numbers, I got to get my touches should not be a motivating factor for this team. And that's a very good thing.
It is maybe the one saving grace that none of these guys are coming up on a big contract where they feel they need to get certain numbers to get paid like they want to. But I'm just curious to see how it plays out.
Except Okoro. We'll see what happens with Isaac. He could be the one.
Well, and that's what makes his thing so fascinating because, and we'll do 1 minute on Okoro, then we'll move on to the next topic. But if he wants to get paid, he's got to put up big numbers. And I just don't see him getting the ball enough to put up the numbers he wants to put up to get the next contract he wants. So does he sign the 3 for $8 and get 24 bank, or does he try to go on the qualifying offer, get more this year and see what he can get next year? But I mean, he averaged about 10 points a game this year, Jason. It would not surprise me if he averaged like 6 points a game. I just don't think there's going to be a ton of shots to go around for Okoro. I just don't. I'm sorry.
I agree with you, but this is a more offensive-minded coaching staff than the last one, so that if you're looking for hope for him, that's where it would come from to me, that it's going to be more focused on the offensive end and less on the defensive end.
But like, I think, are they going to let him create?
No.
No. And they're not running sets for him, so a lot of his shots came off standstill corner threes.
And that's still what it's going to be. You stand in the corner and wait for the ball.
Yeah.
So you could be right. I tend to think – I still think the qualifying offer is his best route. I do too. I think, and normally we don't usually see that in these – and maybe someone will come up and, you know, I mentioned this – I don't know if we talked about this on a podcast or on the show, but like, you know, when you got to this point in the season, Lowry Markkanen and the Bulls couldn't come to terms on a deal, and the Cavs stepped in. It was September. It was like late August, early September when they hammered that out and they got that 3-team deal done. And then Donovan and the Jazz deal was done in August, and that was Colin Sexton. Cavs and Colin couldn't really come to an agreement. Late August, early September is when the hammer dropped on that. So we're probably still another 2 weeks out if you follow that timeline. And that's not to say that this will follow that, but that is a pattern. So we're probably still another 2 weeks out before we get clarity on that, 2 to 3 weeks out, if Isaac's going to get an offer from someone else. If not, his best recourse might be sign the qualifying offer and then enter unrestricted free agency next year.
Well, with the Markkanen extension, the only team that has enough cap space to give him any kind of offer that's better than the Cavs offer is the Detroit Pistons. And it would be absolutely hysterical if Detroit and JB Bickerstaff made a long-term deal or offer for Isaac Okoro after they just drafted Ron Holland, after they drafted Thompson last year. They already have no shooting on the team. Just to double down with the most athletic, agile front court ever with zero spacing.
JB does love Isaac, but I don't see how he fits there. I just don't see how he fits.
All right, let's take a break real quick, Jason. We'll talk about one more thing before we wrap up. But today's show is brought to us by FanDuel. You know, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games. And that's a bummer. But thanks to FanDuel, they let us stay in the game anytime I want just by opening up the app and placing a bet. And this summer, every day, someone's getting a boost or a bonus. So make sure you download the FanDuel app at FanDuel.com/UCSS. FanDuel's an official sportsbook partner of Major League Baseball and the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Jason, last topic real quick. Chris Fedor on the Wine and Gold podcast last week mentioned that after Kenny Atkinson returned from Paris, he will meet with Kobe Altman, Mike Gansey, and the Cavs front office to discuss that final 15th roster spot. It's most likely going to be a veteran minimum contract just based off the desire to stay under the luxury tax. And something that Fedor said on the podcast was, quote, the Cavs are going to have a discussion about whether or not there are any players with previous ties to Kenny from his days in Atlanta, Brooklyn, or Golden State that would make sense for this roster. He mentioned potentially Tristan Thompson or Marcus Morris. I think Guerschon, Yabusele, the guy who dunked on LeBron in the Olympics, has ties to him from Team France. We're talking about the 15th spot on a roster, Jason. Do any of those names do anything for you? Should Cavs fans be excited? It'll be their one acquisition of the summer, I guess, external acquisition, but that's kind of the pool the Cavs are fishing in for that last roster spot.
No, there's nothing exciting about that. Although if it's someone who's already previously been here, we've seen how, when they first brought Tristan back, I thought that was the bottom of the roster type move. And then he wound up playing a much more significant role than I think anyone imagined. And even
so did Morris as a buyout guy.
Morris as a buyout guy played significant minutes. I thought the way Marcus talked at the end of the season on that podcast kind of told me that he felt like his days here were over. But maybe not. Maybe there is room for a reunion there. If I had to pick between the two, as much as I love Tristan, I'd probably take Marcus Morris between those guys. But either way, yeah, you're not looking for someone who's going to, at this point, you think is going to have an impactful role. But, man, you never know.
Yeah. Tristan, listen, the Cavs front court depth is terrifying. Like, Dean Wade can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know what you're getting from George Niang this year. If he came back into the best season of his career, Jason, I wouldn't be shocked. And if he came out and his playoff struggles continued, I also wouldn't be shocked. I could see either end of the spectrum completely. He may be a perfect fit in Atkinson's offense that shoots a ton of threes, or he could be a complete square peg in a round hole based off his lack of speed. Let's just put it that way. In a fast-paced, up-tempo offense. I have no idea. If those are your only two backup bigs on the roster, you need somebody. So I do think, even though it's the 15th roster spot, it's a little more important than most 15th roster spots just because the lack of depth there and reliable depth is severe. With that being said, Tristan Thompson post-steroids was a non-factor.
Yeah.
I don't think you could bring him back. If he wants to get back on the juice, I'm all in. I'm in. He was terrific on the juice, and when he was off, he was literally just a locker room guy. And he was a great locker room guy. Like, what the Cavs got from Tristan Thompson post-steroids was what I think they thought they were going to get the whole season. Everything pre the suspension was icing on the cake, but I think they kind of knew. The dude was on ESPN like a year and a half ago. Let's just call a spade.
And I do think that there was a time where this locker room needed that guy.
Yeah.
I think we're past that. This is a team now that been in the playoffs the last 2 years, won a series this year, advanced the second round. This team should not need a babysitter anymore. We've moved beyond the voice in the locker room type of league. Now it's different if it's Udonis Haslem in Miami. That's a much different situation than Tristan here. Haslem is sort of a fixture within the entire franchise for over a decade. Tristan, while a very important piece, was also gone for a few years. It's just a little bit different. I think we're past the point of having to have that loud vocal leader guy, that locker room guy. These guys should know what they're doing by now. So if you're going to make me pick between that lot, I'll take Marcus Morris.
Yeah. So Morris and Yabusele, who had an awesome Olympics, by the way. He was incredible in the Olympics, not just against Team USA, but just kind of against everybody. He was arguably France's second or third best player behind Wemby and Collier. I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but he was awesome. And when you dunk on LeBron like that, it's going to raise some people's eyes. And he's completely changed his body from when he was a first-round pick. He was a 16th overall pick of the Celtics a few years back.
Yeah.
And couldn't get off the bench. I have no idea, Jason, how much better he looks in FIBA play than he would coming back to the NBA now. And I truly can't, in my mind, gauge the comparison. It's a smaller court. They allow way more physicality. Would he foul out in 6 seconds playing that way in the NBA?
Right.
I don't know. So based off that, I would lean towards Marcus Morris of the three if I had to choose one. just because I do think Morris is a more reliable 3-point shooter, and he still gives you that kind of FU tough guy mentality that
Right.
this team I still think does lack. But if you wanted to tell me Yabusele's the right guy, you like his upside more and is a little more versatile in terms of a perimeter defender, I'm not going to say it's the wrong move. I just have no idea how what we saw in FIBA truly translates to the NBA game. We saw Yabusele in the NBA for a few years, and he couldn't get off the Celtics bench. I know he's transformed his body. I know he's a better player now than he was, but I don't have a ton of confidence that he could be a real contributor, even though I don't think any of the three guys we're talking about should be in the playoff rotation.
He's only 28. I just looked it up. I wasn't sure how old he was. He's actually 28 is probably a little bit older than I thought they would be, but still 20s. Yeah. He's in his 20s. Marcus Morris, mid-30s. Tristan, obviously, at the end. So if you're trying to take an upside swing.
Definitely more upside.
If there is such a thing at 28, a little bit more athletic. So do you want the proven thing in Marcus Morris, who provided you some pretty important playoff minutes? Or, when you look at the 15th spot, you want to try and swing upside and see if maybe you can find another sort of jewel or a rough diamond that you can polish. This team has done a nice job. Give them credit for player development. They have done well in that role and sort of squeezing everything you can get out of certain guys. So I don't know. I'd still take Marcus Morris, but I couldn't be. It's a 15th guy. Who cares? If they want to take a upside swing, so be it.
In that same podcast, Fedor also said Amani Bates will most likely be a G League guy again in 2024-25. So I'm terrified to break that news to G on Wednesday. Just a heads up. Jason, we'll wrap on this. Assuming LeBron would be willing to, I'm trying to phrase this right. How long do you think LeBron could play in the NBA if he wasn't wired like LeBron and he'd be okay becoming a bench guy or a guy that comes off the bench and plays just a role? Like, do you think he has 10 more years if he wanted to play 10 more years?
For sure 5. For sure 5. If he wanted to. And yeah, it would get down. It would be a reduced role. It would be a maybe 15 minutes a night off the bench type, and in year 45, age 45.
It's absurd. Because I was going to go 7. I think he could play to 7.
It's really, for me, it's really more of like soft tissue and could his hand, I know it sounds silly, but like your hamstrings at 45 and 46 and 47, could his body or would it just break down? I remember talking to Byron Scott about that, and Byron in his 50s when he was the coach of the Cavs. And I said, could you get out there and play? He's like, no. His legs are gone. And I mean, obviously LeBron's a marvel, but I for sure 5 years at a pretty high level.
I play with a guy every week who played at Xavier back in the day, and he's 48 now, and was a very, very good basketball player, still pretty good. But he talks about the process of like stretching before, after, and how much it takes his body to get warmed up to play with some younger guys who just bigger, stronger, and faster than him at this point. I think LeBron could play 7 more years. I know it sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but if you told me in the year 2032 that LeBron was the 8th man on the Thunder, who still had SGA and Chet and Jalen Williams and their entire team because they're all literal babies, and LeBron is twice the age of the guy they just drafted, 3 times the age. LeBron will be 48 when they draft a 17-year-old. LeBron will be 3 times as old as the Thunder's 2032 lottery pick because they traded I was thinking about I just think LeBron, if he wanted to, could play forever. Literally, as long as he wants.
He got like, is it just me or did he get white over the summer? Like the beard and it happened fast.
See, I think it's the time difference in Paris because he's technically ahead of us, so he looks older. But yeah, it
I wonder if he just stopped dyeing it. I wonder if he was dyeing it and he just stopped dyeing it because like, yeah, it came, the gray
but
came.
But it looked badass. Like he was, when he was cooking in the 4th quarter and you got gray beard LeBron cooking your ass, like it felt like the Uncle Drew thing with Kyrie, but this was real. Like, It was awesome. Last thing, we're going to do this on UCSS another day, Jason. So it's really a one-word answer, however you want to do it. For just this upcoming season, for literally just this season. And if you don't even want to answer this now, you can save it for UCSS. You might do this Thursday. Would you rather have LeBron or Donovan Mitchell on your team? just this season. You
Oh,
want to save it for Thursday? That's a great tease. You can think about it. We'll get you that answer on Thursday. Appreciate you guys tuning in for this bit of an impromptu Ultimate Cavs show on a Tuesday night. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.